The galactic insult, the grand hall of the Galactic Council, shimmered with lights from 1,000 alien worlds. Delegates from all corners of the galaxy sat at long curved tables made of glowing crystal. Each representative wore their planet's traditional attire, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright disdain. In the center of the room stood a solitary human ambassador, Michael Lee. Dressed in a simple black suit, he looked small compared to the towering alien figures around him, but his calm face hid the storm brewing inside. For years, humanity had fought to earn a seat at the Council. Earth, considered a death world by galactic standards, had finally been granted observer status. But that came with conditions. They were allowed to listen, not speak. The Council believed humans were too emotional and primitive to contribute meaningfully to interstellar politics. Today's meeting was meant to discuss peace treaties and trade agreements. However, the conversation had taken a sharp turn, with several alien delegates openly mocking Earth and its inhabitants. The Deathworlders are nothing more than animals pretending to be civilized, said High Chancellor Rox of the Zellan Dominion, his voice dripping with contempt, his thin-scaled face twisted into a sneer. Their planet is barely livable. It's a miracle they've survived this long. A ripple of laughter spread through the room. Ambassador Lee stood silently, his hands clasped behind his back. He focused on the floor, pretending not to hear, but his jaw tightened. Another delegate, a spider-like creature from the arachnid clans, clicked its mandibles. They boast about their resilience, yet their technology is centuries behind ours. What use is their so-called adaptability when they can't even build faster than like ships without help? More laughter followed, louder this time. The representatives weren't even trying to hide their disdain anymore. Lee's eyes scanned the room. He noticed a few delegates who remained silent, those from species that had once been underestimated themselves. Their eyes met his briefly, before looking away, unwilling to stand up against the majority. Ambassador Lee boomed a voice from the front of the hall. It was Supreme Overseer Quarks, the Council's leader. His massive metallic frame glinted under the lights, and his mechanical voice held no warmth. Do you wish to respond? You may have the floor for now. The room grew quiet. All eyes turned to the human. Lee stepped forward, his footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. He took a moment to adjust his tie, his expression calm, but his eyes sharp. Thank you, Supreme Overseer Lee began, his voice steady. And thank you, esteemed delegates, for your candid opinions about my people. A few chuckles broke the silence, but Lee ignored them. He took a deep breath and continued. For centuries, humanity has faced challenges that would have wiped out many civilizations. Our world is a dangerous place. We've endured wars, pandemics, and natural disasters. And yet we've survived, not because we are the strongest or the smartest, but because we adapt, we learn, we grow. Frox snorted. And yet here you stand begging for scraps at our table. The laughter returned, louder than ever. Lee's fists clenched at his sides, but he forced himself to remain composed. You misunderstand us, Lee said, his voice rising slightly. We are not here to beg, we are here to offer. Humanity has something unique, a spirit that refuses to break no matter the odds. That is what we bring to this council. Spare us the speeches, Quarks interrupted. Your world is irrelevant. You're here because we allow it. Remember your place. The silence that followed was deafening. Lee stared at Quarks, his calm facade finally cracking. His next words were measured, but there was a sharp edge to them. You've made a grave mistake, Lee said softly. You see our kindness as weakness, our patience as cowardice. But I promise you this: humanity will only take so much. Push us far enough, and you'll see why we've earned the name. Deathworlders' jests filled the room. The delegates stared at Lee, their expressions ranging from shock to amusement. Versus leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Is that a threat? Human Lee smiled, but there was no warmth in it. It's a warning. Without another word, Lee turned and walked out of the chamber. The delegates erupted into murmurs, some dismissing his words, others looking uneasy. Versus leaned back in his seat, smirking. Let them try, he muttered to himself. There are nothing but insects waiting to be crushed. But in the far corners of the room, a few silent observers exchanged worried glances. They had heard stories about the Deathworlders, stories that suggested humans were far more dangerous than they appeared. As Lee exited the council building and looked up at the stars, he whispered to himself, you wanted us to stay in our place, but now you'll see what happens when we don't. The stage was set. The galaxy had just made its biggest mistake, underestimating humanity. Whispers across the stars, news of the heated exchange at the Galactic Council spread like wildfire across the galaxy. It was the kind of story that ignited debate, sparked curiosity, and stirred unease in the quiet. Corners of alien societies, reports on human defiance flooded interstellar news networks with headlines like Death Worlder Ambassador challenges the Council and the arrogance of Earth. Are humans a threat or a joke on Earth? The response was immediate within hours of Ambassador Lee's speech. The human population rallied. Videos of his war morning were replayed millions of times with citizens across the globe, calling it a moment of pride. But while the people cheered, those in power were far less optimistic. In a dimly lit room deep beneath Geneva, the United Earth Defense Command (EDC) held an emergency meeting. A holographic table displayed images of key Galactic Council members, their species, and their respective military strengths. General Elena Vargas, the head of Earth's military forces, slammed her fist on the table. Levy Pope, the hornet's nest. Do you have any idea what kind of retaliation we might face now? They already think we're primitive savages. Dr. Aaron Patel, Earth's top xenobiologist, leaned back in his chair. Savages maybe, but resilient savages, he said calmly. That's why they're scared of us, Elena. They don't mock us because they think we're weak. They mock us because they don't understand how we've survived for so long on a death world. President Morgan Hayes, seated at the head of the table, raised her hand for silence. Enough. This isn't about Lee's words. The question is, what do we do now? The Council might dismiss us publicly, but what if someone decides to test us? Are we ready for that? The room fell silent. The truth hung heavy in the air. Humanity wasn't ready. While their ingenuity and determination had gotten them far, their military technology still lagged behind the galactic standard. Earth had recently started developing its own fleet of warships, but they were outnumbered and outgunned by nearly every major species. Galaxy, we need allies, said Admiral Marcus Chen, breaking the silence. Not all Council members hate us. Some of them know what it's like to be underestimated. If we can convince them to stand with us, that's a big if. Vargas muttered. Big or not, it's our only chance. Hayes said firmly. Chen, start working on outreach efforts. Vargas, accelerate the fleet production. I want every resource we have going towards strengthening our defenses. And Lee. The room turned toward the holographic image of the ambassador who had joined the meeting remotely. Yes, Madam President. You've already started this fire, Hay said. Let's see if you can control it. I'm authorizing you to approach the silent members of the Council. Find out where they stand. If there's even a chance we can secure allies, take it. Lee nodded, his expression grim. Understood. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, whispers of the human warning reached every major power in the Zellan Dominion. High Chancellor of Rock sat in his sprawling chamber reviewing footage of Lee's speech. His advisors surrounded him, each voicing their opinions. Humans are reckless, one advisor said. They should be crushed before they become a real threat. Another advisor, a younger and more cautious Zellan, shook her head. Crushing them might have the opposite effect. Death Worlders thrive under pressure. They've survived worse than us. Versus leaned back in his throne, a cruel smile spreading across his face. Let them thrive, let them fight. It won't matter. Their spirit can only carry them so far when faced with overwhelming power on the other side of the galaxy. In the Arachnid clans, a similar discussion took place. The clan mother of the largest hive clicked her mandibles and fought. They are either fools or visionaries, she said. If it is the latter, the galaxy may soon have to rethink its stance on humans. In the dark depths of space, a faint distress signal began to pulse. A small, desperate cry for help. It was picked up by Earth's long-range scanners within hours. The signal was weak, almost undecipherable, but one word stood out. Death Worlders back in the EDC war room. The signal played on repeat as analysts tried to decode its meaning. Why would anyone out there call for us? Vargas asked, frowning. And why now? It's a trap, one of the officers said bluntly. They're baiting us, trying to lure us out. Lee shook his head. Or it's someone who believes in U.S., someone who thinks the Death Worlders are their only hope. President Hayes crossed her arms, her expression thoughtful. If it's a trap, we need to be ready. But if it's genuine, we can't ignore it. Humanity has always answered the call for help, even when it wasn't convenient. We won't stop now. The Council agreed to send a small, stealthy team to investigate. The signal's coordinates were located deep in neutral space, far from any major galactic power. Mission would be dangerous, but it was a risk Earth was willing to take. As the team prepared to leave, Lee's warning continued to echo across the galaxy. Some mocked it, some dismissed, and some feared it. But one thing was certain, humanity's defiance had awakened something. Whether it was hope or doom remained to be seen. The silent battlefield. The human stealth ship Vanguard slipped into the void of neutral space, its matte black surface blending seamlessly with the darkness around it. Inside the ship, tension was palpable. The crew knew this was no ordinary mission. The distress signal they were investigating carried a mix of desperation and mystery, and they were heading straight into the unknown. Captain Alina Ross stood at the helm, her sharp eyes scanning the holographic display of their surroundings. Anything on long-range sensors? She asked Lieutenant Carter. The ship's lead analyst shook his head. Nothing yet, Captain. No signs of movement. No ships, no defenses, just silence. Too silent, muttered Surgeon Marcos, the team's head of security. This smells like a setup. Ross nodded. She couldn't dismiss the possibility humanity's bold stand at the Galactic Council had painted a target on Earth's back. The distress signal could very well be a trap set by an enemy eager to snuff out humanity's defiance before it gained traction. Stay sharp, Ross said. No assumptions. Until we know more. If it's a trap, we'll spring it on our terms. The Sigma led them to a barren, lifeless system, orbiting a dim red star. The only notable object was a Earth station floating near a dead planet. Its metal exterior was battered, scorched, and partially torn apart, as though it had been through a vicious battle. Source of the signal confirmed. Carter reported it's coming from that station. Scans? Ross asked. Minimal power readings, no active weapons or shields. The place is barely holding together. Marcos frowned. Perfect place for an ambush. Ross considered the options. Marcos, take your team and scout the station. Stay in constant contact. If anything feels off, you pull out. Immediately. Understood, Marcos said, grabbing his helmet and signaling his squad to gear up. The boarding team breached the station through an airlock that hissed ominously. As it opened, inside the station was eerily quiet. The air was stale, the lights flickered weakly, and every step echoed through the hollow corridors. Looks like no one's home. One of the soldiers whispered. Don't assume that. Marcos snapped. Stay focused. As they moved deeper into the station, they found signs of a violent struggle. Scorch marks from energy weapons, shattered equipment, and strange dried blood smeared across the walls. Captain, this place has seen a fight, Marcos reported through the cons. Whoever was here didn't leave willingly. Keep searching. Ross's voice came through. Find the source of the signal. The team eventually reached a central chamber where a dim console blinked weakly. Carter worked quickly to access the station's logs, his fingers flying across the controls. I've got something, he said. Logs indicate this station belonged to the Gallon, a minor species known for advanced data collection. It looks like they intercepted a high-level transmission from the Celtan Dominion. Something about Earth. What about the signal? Ross asked over the comms. It's automated, Carter replied, set to repeat after the station was attacked. Whatever happened here? The Gans were trying to warn us. Marcos stepped closer. Warn us about what? Carter's face turned pale as he decrypted the final piece of the message. It's a hit list. Earth is on it. The Zelans and several other council members are planning a coordinated strike against Death Worlders. This station was attacked because they tried to send the warning. Marcos's hand tightened on his weapon. So the council's not just mocking us, they're planning to eliminate us. Back Vanguard. Captain Ross listened intently to the transmission from the boarding team. Get back to the ship now, she ordered. If this information is accurate, we're sitting on a powder kick. But just as the team began their retreat, the station shook. Violent anti alarms blared, and the air filled with the sound of distant explosions. What was that? Marcos barked. Carter checked the console. We've got incoming. A fleet just dropped out of hyperspace. Zelan ships on the Vanguard. Ross's jaw tightened as the ship's sensors lit up with hostile signatures. They must have been monitoring the station. They know we're here. How many? Ross asked, already effing the answer. At least a dozen warships, Lieutenant Carter said grimly. And they're arming weapons. Marcos, you and your team need to get out of there now, Ross shouted over the comms. We're moving, Marcos replied, his squad sprinting back through the station's corridors. But the path was no longer clear. Explosions rocked the station as the Z-Trans began firing on it, aiming to destroy any evidence of their plans. The Vanguard was already preparing for a fight. It couldn't win. Ross issued rapid orders to her crew. Power up. The cloaking field were going dark. No one fires unless I give the order. But Captain Carter protested. If we don't return fire, we're not here to win a war. Ross interrupted. We're here to survive and get this intel back to Earth. Do you understand? Yes, Mom, Carter said reluctantly. The Vanguard activated its cloaking field just as a barrage of energy blasts streaked toward the station. The human ship vanished from sight, but their position remained precarious inside the station Marcos, and his team fought their way back to the airlock. The sound of collapsing metal and distant explosions filled their ears. "We're almost there," Marcos shouted, as another blast shook the station. A massive beam tore through a wall behind them. Narrowly missing the squad, they reached the airlock just as the Zelen fleet intensified its assault. The station was coming apart, and time was running out. "Captain, we're on board," Marcos yelled through the comms. "Brace for extraction." Ross ordered the Vanguard, engaged its engines, slipping silently through the chaos. The Zelens hadn't detected them yet, but the station's destruction was imminent. As the Vanguard sped away, the station exploded in a blinding flash of light, erasing all traces of the Galen's warning. But humanity now had the intel they needed, and a deadly new enemy to prepare for. The enemy, revealed, the Vanguard glided silently through the void, cloaked in darkness. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy with tension. The crew had narrowly escaped the Zalen ambush, but the intel they had recovered painted a grim picture of the galaxy's intentions toward humanity. Captain Alan Ross stood in the command center, her gaze fixed on the holographic display. Red blips representing the Zoltan fleet patrolled the area where the station had once been. The explosion had erased the evidence, but not the threat status report. Ross commanded. Lieutenant Carter leaned over the console. "Cloaking field is holding steady. The Z-Trans haven't detected us. They seem to think the station's destruction wiped us out." "Good," Ross replied. Let's keep it that way." Sergeant Marcos entered the room, his face grim. "Captain, we've decrypted more of the data. It's worse than we thought." Ross turned to him. "Explain." Marcos placed a portable terminal on the table, projecting the decrypted files. "The Z-Trans weren't acting alone. This is a coordinated effort involving multiple species from the Galactic Council. They see us as a threat not because of our technology, but because of what we are." "Deathworlders," Carter muttered, his voice tinged with frustration. Marcos nodded. "Exactly. They are afraid of our resilience, our ability to adapt, and most of all our unpredictability. They believe we're too dangerous to coexist with." Ross crossed her arms, her expression hardening. "So they decided to wipe us out before we can fully establish ourselves on the galactic stage." "There's more." Marrows said, his voice growing darker. "The Z-Trans have been monitoring Earth's defenses. They've identified our weaknesses, key infrastructure, strategic locations, even our population centers. They are planning a first strike." Silence fell over the room as the weight of his words sank in. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, each of them understanding the stakes. "Do we have a timeline?" Ross asked, breaking the silence. "According to the files, the strike is planned for 3 weeks from now," Marcos replied. "They're assembling fleets and finalizing their strategy. Earth has no idea what's coming." Carter's fists clenched. "They're underestimating us. They think they can take us out because we're not as advanced as they are, but they don't understand what we're capable of." Ross nodded. "And Willow, make sure they learn." She turned to the crew. "Our mission just changed. We're not just delivering this intel to Earth. We're going to use it to turn the tide." The Vanguard accelerated toward the nearest jump point, its engines humming softly. The journey back to Earth would take days, but every second counted as the crew worked tirelessly to analyze the data and prepare their report. An uneasy feeling lingered. The Z-Trans wouldn't let them escape so easily. Captain, Carter called out, his voice tense. "We've got a problem." Ross hurried to his station. "What is it?" "The Zelens are deploying scout ships," Carter said, pointing to the display. "They're sweeping the area. If they come too close, they might detect us, even with the cloaking field." Ross frowned. "How long until they reach our position?" 10 minutes, maybe. "Less," Carter replied. "Marcos," Ross said, turning to the sergeant, "prepare the crew for evasive maneuvers if they spot us. We need to be ready to fight." The next few minutes felt like an eternity. The Vanguard drifted silently, its engines powered down to avoid detection. The crew held their breath as the Zelen scout ships drew closer, their searchlights cutting through the darkness. "Scout ship is within range," Carter whispered. "They're scanning for energy signatures." "Hold steady," Ross ordered, her voice calmed. Despite the tension, the scout ship passed dangerously close, its lights brushing against the Vanguard's hull. For a moment, it seemed as though the humans would be discovered. Then the scout ship veered away, continuing its search. The crew exhaled in unison, relief washing over them. "We're not out of this yet," Ross said, her tone firm. "Stay alert. The Z-Trans aren't giving up." As the Vanguard resumed its journey, Ross gathered her senior officers in the briefing room. "We've got one chance to turn this around," she said. "Earth needs time to prepare. Council needs a reason to think twice. Before attacking us, that means we have to hit them where it hurts. What are you suggesting, Captain Marcos? Asked a preemptive strike Ross. Replied, we use the intel we've gathered to disrupt their plans, sabotage their fleets, expose their agenda, and show the galaxy that humanity isn't as weak as they think. The room fell silent. As the crew considered her words, it's risky, Carter said finally. But if we pull it off, it could change everything. Ross nodded. Where Death Worlders risk is what we do best. As the Vanguard hurtled toward Earth, the crew prepared for the fight of their lives. They knew the odds were against them, but they also knew what was at stake. Humanity's survival depended on their actions, and they were determined to make every second count. The plan to strike back. The Vanguard approached the edges of Earth's solar system, its engines humming softly. The crew had made it past the Zellan scouts, but their mission was far from over. The decrypted data painted a grim picture, and time was running out. Earth remained unaware of the looming threat, and the Galactic Council's fleet was assembling for its first strike. In the briefing room, Captain Elena Ross stood before her senior officers. A holographic display showed the enemy fleet's positions and Earth's vulnerable defenses. We don't have much time, Ross began, her tone resolute. If we wait for Earth's military to act, it'll be too late. The Z-Trans and their allies have underestimated us. We'll use that to our advantage. Lieutenant Carter leaned forward. Captain, are you suggesting an offense at strike? Ross nodded. Exactly. We'll hit them before they hit us. We've got the intel, and we've got the element of surprise. If we can sabotage their fleet and disrupt their command structure, we can delay their invasion long enough for Earth to prepare. Sergeant Marcos glanced at the hologram. Their main fleet is stationed near the Silks Nebula. It's heavily guarded, but if we can get close enough, we might be able to take out their communic hub. Carter frowned. That's risky. If they catch us, we're done for. Risky or not, it's our best shot, Ross replied firmly. We'll cloak the Vanguard and approach the nebula undetected. Marcos, I want you to assemble a strike team. Your mission will be to infiltrate the hub, plant charges, and get out before they know what hit them. Marcos nodded. Understood, Captain. The crew got to work, each member focused on their task. Engineers fed the cloaking field, while the strike team prepared their gear. The tension was palpable, but so was the determination in the weapons bay. Marcos inspected the explosives, his team standing by. We'll only get one shot at this, he said. Stick to the plan, and we'll make it out alive. Meanwhile, in the command center, Ross and Carter reviewed the route to the Silks Nebula. The holographic map flickered with enemy patrols and potential hazards. Once we're in the nebula, sensors will be almost useless, Carter said. We'll be flying blind. We'll manage, Ross replied. We have to. The Vanguard entered the Silks Nebula under the cover of darkness. The nebula's swirling gases created an eerie backdrop, and visibility was minimal. The crew moved silently, their eyes glued to their stations. Cloaking field is holding, Carter reported. No signs of detection. Good, Ross said. Take us closer to the hub. Marcos, your team ready? Marcos's voice crackled over the comms. Ready and waiting, Captain. The Vanguard drifted toward the enemy hub, a massive structure bristling with weaponry and ships. The crew held their breath as they approached, knowing one wrong move could mean disaster. Strike team deploy, Ross commanded. Marcos and his team boarded a stealth shuttle and launched toward the hub. The shuttle glided through the nebula, its cloaking field masking its approach. Inside the hub, the Zellan officers moved about, unaware of the impending danger. Marcos's team slipped through the airlocks, their movements precise and silent, planting charges. One of the team members whispered, attaching explosives to the hub's communication arrays. Time seemed to stretch as the team worked quickly, but carefully. Every second felt like an eternity. Back on the Vanguard, Carter monitored the team's progress. They're almost done, he said. Stay sharp, Ross replied. The moment they're back, we're getting out of here. Suddenly, an alarm blared on the hub. The Zellans had detected the explosives. Red lights flashed, and guards scrambled to respond. Captain, they've been spotted, Carter exclaimed. Marcos, you're compromised, Ross shouted over the comms. Get back to the shuttle now. Marrow's team sprinted through the corridors, exchanging fire with Zellan guards. Explosions rocked the hub as the charges detonated, taking out key systems. We're almost there, Marcos yelled, covering his team. As they boarded the shuttle launched just as the hub erupted in flames. The Vanguard swooped in, its bay doors opening to retrieve the strike team. They are aboard, Carter reported. Engage engines. Ross commanded. The Vanguard shot out of the nebula, its cloaking field flickering. As it evaded enemy ships, the crew cheered as the hub collapsed behind them. A brilliant explosion lighting up the nebula back in the command center. Ross addressed her crew. We've dealt them a blow, but this is just the beginning. Earth is still in danger, and the Council won't take this lightly. We need to warn humanity and prepare for what's coming. The crew nodded, their resolve stronger than ever. They knew the road ahead would be dangerous, but they also knew they had no choice. Humanity's survival depended on their courage and determination. As the Vanguard sped toward Earth, the crew prepared for the final phase of their mission. The G had underestimated Death Worlders. For too long now, it was time to show them what humanity was truly capable of. Rallying Earth's defenders, the Vanguard hurtled through the void of space, the remnants of the Silk's nebula fading behind it. Captain Elena Ross stood on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the star-speckled view. Ahead, the Galactic Council's fleet had suffered a critical blow. But this was no time for celebration. The clock was ticking, and Earth remained unaware of the storm heading its way. Lieutenant Carter, how long until we reach Earth? Ross asked. 2 hours at our current speed, Captain Carter replied. Ross nodded, her mind racing. 2 hours to prepare humanity for a fight. It wasn't expecting the Galactic Council's forces would regroup, and when they did, Earth would need every advantage to stand a chance. Down in the communications base, specialist M. Tran worked feverishly to patch through a message to Earth. The Council's attacks have begun to disrupt long-range communications, but the Vanguard's crew had no intention of letting that stop them. Signal Earth's defense network. TR said, her voice tense. They need to know what's coming. The comms crackled, and finally a response came through. This is Commander Hall of Earth Defense Command. Identify yourself. This is Special ISD Metron of the Vanguard, she replied. We've just returned from enemy territory. The Galactic Council is preparing an invasion fleet, and they'll be here within days. Earth needs to mobilize immediately in the war room of Earth's orbital station. Commander Hall stared at the holographic display. The Vanguard's report had shaken him to his core. The Council has never launched a direct attack on Earth, Hall said, pacing. What's changed? Ross's face appeared on the screen, her expression grim. They think humanity is too dangerous to exist. They believe we've become a threat to galactic peace. Hall frowned. And we were a threat to their control? Ross replied, they see our resilience, our adaptability, and it terrifies them. But this isn't just about survival, Commander. It's about proving we belong in this galaxy. Back on Earth, news of the impending invasion spread like wildfire. Cities buzzed with activity as civilians were evacuated to underground bunkers. Factories shifted to producing weapons and ships, while Earth's defense forces scrambled to organize a united front in a secure bunker beneath the Rockies. Ross met with Earth's top leaders. The room was filled with tension, but Ross's voice was steady as she outlined the plan. The Council expects us to be disorganized. She said they think we'll panic, but we've already struck a blow they won't recover from easily. If we can coordinate our defenses and strike strategically, we can hold them off. A grizzled general leaned forward. You're asking us to bet everything on a single plan. If this fails, Earth is done. It won't fail, Ross said firmly, because we're not fighting alone. The Council's arrogance has alienated many other species. If we can rally them to our side, we'll have a chance. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of the solar system, Zellan scouts picked up the Vanguard's trail. Their reports quickly reached the remnants of the Council fleet. They've returned to their death world. A Zellan commander, his foolish, they've only sealed their fate. Orders were sent, and the Council's fleet began its advance toward Earth. Massive warships, bristling with weapons, moved into formation. The countdown to war had begun as Earth's forces prepared for battle. The Vanguard became the nerve center of the resistance. Messages were sent across the galaxy, calling on old allies and surprising sympathizers to stand with humanity. In the hangar, Sergeant Marcos led his ground troops in last-minute drills. Remember, they think we're weak, he said. Let's show them how wrong they are. Above them, Earth's orbital defenses powered up, their massive cannons ready to unleash a storm of firepower. On the ground, anti-aircraft batteries were deployed, and fighter pilots took to the skies. Back on the Vanguard, Ross addressed her crew. This isn't just a fight for Earth, she said. This is a fight for our future, for the right to exist. We may be outnumbered, but we are not outmatched. We faced the impossible before, and we do it again. The crew erupted in cheers, their spirits bolstered by her words. They knew the stakes, but they also knew what humanity was capable of when pushed to the brink. As the Vanguard joined Earth's fleet, Ross took one last look at the planet below. It wasn't just home. It was a symbol of everything humanity had fought for. The final battle was approaching, And the galaxy was about to learn what happened when Deathworlders stopped playing nice. The battle for humanity's future, the Galactic Council's fleet, loomed on the edge of the solar system, their massive warships casting ominous shadow over the stars. Earth's defenders waited a fraction of the size in comparison, but resolute on the bridge of the Vanguard. Captain Elena Ross stood tall, her expression calm. Despite the chaos brewing around her enemy's ships, our advancing. Lieutenant Carter reported they'll be in range in 3 minutes. Ross nodded. Activate the defense grid, hold the line. Until I give the signal, this is our home. We don't fall back in orbit. Earth's defensive platforms lit up the darkness of space. Massive plasma cannons fired, sending glowing streaks toward the advancing fleet. The first Council ship to enter range was hit dead on its shield, struggling. Before collapsing, the explosion was a beacon, signaling the start of the battle. From the surface of Earth, anti-aircraft batteries wed to life, ready for the smaller craft that would attempt to breach the atmosphere. Fighter squadrons soared into the sky, their pilots determined to protect the planet. And he crossed on board the lead ship of the Council's fleet. Commander Vitran sneered as he watched Earth's defenses spring into action. Primitive, he said, turning to his officers. They think their toys can stop us. Press forward. Show them the might of the Council. As the Council ships advanced, a volley of missiles and energy blasts rained down on Earth's fleet. The Vanguard shuddered under the assault, but Ross remained steadfast, shields holding at 70%. Carter reported. Good, Ross said. Let's make them regret underestimating us. Target their lead ship. Fire everything we've got. The Vanguard unleashed a barrage of missiles and plasma fire. The Council's lead ship, caught off guard by the intensity of the attack, took heavy damage. Its shields flickered and failed, leaving it vulnerable to a final devastating strike. As the battle raged in space, ground forces on Earth braced for impact. Council dropships began descending through the atmosphere, aiming for key cities. Installations. Sergeant Marcos and his troops waited in the ruins of an old industrial district, their weapons trained on the sky. When they land, we hit them hard and fast. Marrows said, no mercy. The first drop ship touched down, its doors opening to release a wave of alien soldiers. Marcos gave the signal, and Earth's defenders opened fire. The streets erupted into chaos as humans and aliens clashed in brutal combat. In space, the tide of the battle began to shift. The Council's fleet was larger and more advanced, but Earth's defenders fought with a ferocity that took them by surprise. The Vanguard led the charge, weaving through enemy fire to strike critical targets. Incoming transmission, Tran announced from the communication station. Ross frowned. Put it through. Vin's face appeared on the screen, his arrogance replaced with thinly veiled frustration. You've proven resourceful, Captain, he said, but you cannot win. Surrender now, and your people may yet survive. Ross's eyes narrowed. Surrender after what you've done? No, Commander. If you want Earth, you'll have to fight for every inch of it, and you'll lose back on the ground. The battle reached a fever pitch. Marcos's squad pushed the alien invaders back, their determination unshaken. Despite the odds, civilians joined the fight, turning makeshift weapons into tools of resistance. From the shadows of the battlefield, unexpected allies emerged. A small fleet of rogue ships appeared in Earth's orbit, blasting into the Council's forces. Ross's call for help had reached farther than anyone anticipated, and species once oppressed by the Council had answered. The turning point came when the Vanguard executed a daring maneuver. Ross ordered the ship to plunge straight into the heart of the Council fleet, targeting their command ship. Captain, that's suicide. Carter protested. Trust me, Ross said, her voice steady. We're not going down without a fight. The Vanguard broke through Council's formation, taking heavy fire, but holding together as they neared the command ship. Ross gave the order, fire. The Vanguard unleashed its payload, hitting the command ship's core. The explosion was massive, sending shock waves through the enemy fleet with their command structure and disarray. The remaining Council ships began to retreat. Cheers erupted across Earth as the Council's fleet withdrew. On the ground, alien invaders surrendered, overwhelmed, met by the human resistance. The cost had been high, but humanity had won. Ross stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, her crew exhausted but victorious. They'll be back, Carter said quietly. Ross nodded. Maybe, but when they do, they'll remember today. They'll remember that humanity doesn't break, we fight, and we survive. Earth had stood its ground, proving once and for all that Deathworlders weren't to be trifled with. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, but now it would never forget.